We have Robert Vaghini of Protect Playa Now, and he's going to talk about lessons we can learn from the Aliso Canyon, Porter Ranch, SoCal Gas Methane Gas Storage Facility disaster. And I just want to also let people know that the Airport Marina Group has been very involved in the Playa del Rey gas issue. And one of our Vice Chair of Conservation, Patricia McPherson, who couldn't be here tonight, I guess she worked on it for many, many years. And she got an EIR done about it and exposed what was going on. And Playa Vista is on one of the worst gas leaks in the western United States. So, and that's one of the reasons they're pulling the water to protect their gas communication system. Anyway, that's a little aside, and here you go, Rob.
Thank you for having me. I know the Sierra Club has been involved with the facility in Playa del Rey for a while, so I'm just going to try to kind of catch you up on what the new coalition of Protect Playa Now is kind of doing in the wake of the Aliso Canyon disaster. Everyone's relatively familiar with the Aliso Canyon natural gas leak. So I have a couple maps over there. One is showing the impact zone for the Aliso Canyon. So SoCal Gas had to relocate people within a 5-mile radius around the leak. So it ended up being tens of thousands of people had to leave their homes for upwards to 6 to 8 months. They weren't able to go back just because of the health impacts. They could not live there. They were getting terrible rashes, terrible nosebleeds, headache, nausea, and they continue to suffer today. But it was, SoCal Gas was forced to provide them money to relocate. So we basically did a comparison map of what would happen if a similar event were to happen at the Playa del Rey facility. The one thing about the location of Aliso Canyon, it's largely surrounded by mountain ranges. So Porter Ranch is on the southern edge of it with Chatsworth, and then you can get over the mountain ranges to like Santa Clarita, but for the most part there's a large area that's just within the mountains. So that kind of limited the number of people that impacted. Only about 280,000 people live in that 5-mile radius. Go to the Playa del Rey, about 500,000 people live within 5 miles of the facility. So if a similar situation were to happen, we're looking at probably hundreds of thousands of people that have to relocate. We're already in a housing crisis. Where are you going to put 100,000 people if we were to have a disaster? On top of that, within the 5-mile radius around the Playa facility, we have LAX, which is the 4th busiest airport in the world. During the Aliso Canyon disaster, you could not fly over that facility for the 4 months that the gas was leaking. What are we going to do as California, as Los Angeles, if we can't use our largest airport for a week, let alone if it was like a 4-month disaster? So our big concerns is that there's a lot of risk that this facility presents. This facility is the smallest and oldest facility that SoCal Gas operates. Aliso Canyon is 12 times larger than this facility, but SoCal Gas is arguing that they need their smallest and oldest, even though they fought for 2 years to reopen their largest. So they've reopened their largest. We were without it for 2 years, Los Angeles. We had no power shortages and we had no gas shortages. They fought to reopen it, and about 1/3 of it is reopened now, but they're still fighting to keep all of their facilities open. So we have a hard time understanding how we could survive without their largest for almost 2 years, that we wouldn't be able to survive without their smallest and oldest. And so a lot of what Protect Playa Now is, so basically in the aftermath of that, Food and Water Watch was working very closely with the Aliso Canyon groups. There's a group called Save Porter Ranch, and so basically in the aftermath of that, they approached Vaghini Institute and said, well, maybe we should start thinking about your facility and what can we do to kind of raise awareness and let people know about the risk at this facility. I got involved through Indivisible CA43, which is just our local chapter of Indivisible, which is really just a activist group that just tries to get constituents involved in their political process. And so Food and Water Watch came to us and I became very involved in the process. So really what we've been doing most recently is just educating the neighborhood. So we've held a couple of forums just to let people know about the facility, about what happened in Aliso Canyon, because a lot of people weren't really aware of all the problems. And then just trying to have them really start asking questions like, what if this happens here? And now that Aliso Canyon happened, we're at a very special point where we can, no longer can we look at these facilities as some benign piece of infrastructure that's not going to hurt you, because you can see what can happen when things go wrong. Yes, everything is great if there's not a leak, and they do leak. They leak all the time, but it's not a massive blowout like what happened at Aliso Canyon. But now they can't just say, it's safe, it's safe. It's like, we know it's not safe. We know what can happen. They don't know what happened up there. They tell everyone that everything's safe, but they've still not released what caused the actual pressure that caused their casing to blow. So they've never actually given us an answer, but they've told us everything's safe. They retrofitted Aliso Canyon with the top line safety measures. They've gone above and beyond any of the requirements. Within 2 weeks of opening some of those wells, they had to shut a third down because they failed their pressure tests. So they're doing the same work at Playa and they're telling us it's safe. But we're frankly just, my view is the only ones that are profiting from this facility is SoCal Gas. If something were to happen like Aliso Canyon, we're the ones that are going to be paying for it. They're not going to pay for it. They're going to come for the public dollars to figure out a way to basically get out of it, or they're going to use their insurance money. But ultimately, SoCal Gas is not going to pay a penny if anything happens to us, and so we're really carrying a lot of risk. So the main thing we're doing is education, and then we have 2 other initiatives that we're working on right now, and that's really why I wanted to come here, just to let you guys know about these initiatives. First is one of the victims of the Aliso Canyon disaster has actually developed an app. It's called the Environmental Health Tracker app. I have some flyers over on the table so you guys can look at it. Basically, it's for Android phones or iPhones, so you can go to either store and you can type in Environmental Health Tracker and you can download it. It's a free app, and what it does, it allows you to report health impacts. So if you're within a 5-mile radius of the Playa del Rey facility, or if you're within a 16-mile radius of the Aliso Canyon facility, you can report the health impacts. So if you get nosebleeds or rashes or feel nauseous or have chronic headaches, one of the most eye-awakening moments for me is when we started talking with some of the Aliso Canyon victims who had been getting nosebleeds or headaches or skin rashes for years, but didn't realize that there was a source of all this until the massive blowout, when they realized, all these symptoms are because I'm getting a toxic level of methane, benzene, formaldehyde that I'm breathing in. And it wasn't until they put that together, like, wait a second, I've been getting nosebleeds for 10 years and having no idea. And so what we're hoping to do is that we can start aggregating some of that data around Playa del Rey so we can kind of start seeing if there's spikes. Then we'll be able to at least go to the Air Quality Management District or even SoCal Gas and be like, we saw spikes on these few days, like what was going on there, and if they had leaks, we can report it. And so we're just trying to aggregate data so that we actually have things that we can go to and be like, what's going on at the facility. Kind of in partnership with that program is we're launching a community monitor program where we're trying to build inexpensive air monitors that will help us detect methane, formaldehyde, benzene, some of the toxic gases that are associated with the methane leak. And then we'll be able to, it's not going to be able to give us perfect data of exactly how much is in the air, but it'll let us show patterns. So we'll see spikes. So and our hope is that we can raise, right now we're on the fundraising portion of it, so we're trying to find grant money and stuff like that, but our goal is to have 200 to 400 units spread throughout the communities around the facility, and hoping this is kind of going to be a pilot program. The units, we're trying to build them from between $80 and $120 so that we can actually, people can afford to have them and foster them in their yards, and then they'll be able to kind of monitor if there's upticks in some of these chemicals, especially if you're living near this facility. And so the idea of these 2 programs is really just to give the community the information and not be dependent on SoCal Gas or the state agencies that have not always been the best at tracking what's going on at these facilities. We feel like if we can have some of this information and we're aggregating it on our own, we're not going to be as dependent on them, and we'll be able to advocate for ourselves from a stronger position. So that's really kind of what I wanted to come and talk to you guys about and let you know, and has any questions?
You have a GoFundMe?
We do. So if you use the internet, can I just go to the Protect Playa
Not
page?
really supposed to raise money for another cause here. I apologize, but that's against the rules of Sierra Club, right, Captain?
Yeah, I mean,
It's not supposed to happen.
But yeah, I mean, the main thing we're trying to do is there's a team of us researching grants and stuff that we're trying to look for. But yes.
you have a website.
Yes. There is a Protect Playa Now website, and there's a lot of information there. We blog regularly about some issues, and then there's a bunch of videos. The actual engineer who's been designing the monitor, there's some good videos of him, and he's actually presenting how they're built, what type of sensors they use. The sensors basically we use cost between $2 and $40, and they monitor just noxious gases, benzenes and methane, stuff like that. And a lot of them are used in everyday things like a carbon monoxide detector. We're going to use a lot of the similar sensors.
So what exactly is the name of the website?
ProtectPlayaNow.org is the coalition website.
Two things. One, I know people out there in the valley near there, and they still have problems. After all these retrofits and all this high-end stuff that's being done, they still have problems. So the question is not whether we have problems here, it's whether they're being reported. And this area is very sensitive. I mean, and the second thing was, I was talking to an old timer that worked on it like maybe 30 years ago, and he said that most of this that's stored there came from out of state. And it's just being stored there because it was available and very cheaply, and then they could sell it to us later at a lot more money. So it's kind of a holding tank for their mineral wealth.
Yes. So
And it's a threat to us.
yeah, most of the gas comes in from Oklahoma and Texas.
Oklahoma and Texas, and they're pumping it here into our ground.
Extract gas, and it's the same thing with Aliso Canyon. SoCal Gas has not and will not ever admit that they don't use this gas locally. But there's very good belief that a lot of this gas they're storing is just hedge betting, and they buy gas when it's cheap, they store it, and when another municipality wants to buy it, they'll ship it out. And the Playa del Rey storage facility, a lot of the gas we believe is actually just used for industrial purposes. So the Chevron refinery in El Segundo, there's the NRG power plant that SoCal Edison gets energy from, and then Scattergood, which the Sierra Club is.
I brought this up, I brought what you're talking about the last time I came here, up Water Ranch. I go to what you call devotionals up there. And they just had a minor earthquake up there. They're having some problems again. They're considering shutting it down because of the earth, they might have a major earthquake there. At that point, we'll have a major explosion. And that's the fear everybody up there at Water Ranch.
Yeah, and actually there's a CBS LA did a great report just maybe 2 weeks ago, middle of May. There was another leak. The Environmental Health Tracker app actually is mentioned, is quoted in that report, because there was, I believe in 4-day period, they reported almost 1,600 health impacts. And then Porter Ranch actually, they have a fence line monitor today at Porter Ranch, and then it corresponded directly with a huge increase in methane gas that came from the facility. SoCal Gas didn't really report it, but it was because they had that data that they could be like, something's wrong, and it kind of gave them the ability to even just get that media attention to it. So that's kind of our hope with these two programs for us, is we'll be able to have that same kind of information, and we'll be able to see ticks and spikes. But yes, the same issue is here. If you look at one of those maps has the red lines on there, those are actually fault lines from the USGS layer. And there's a couple fault lines within a few miles of the facility that we have. To my knowledge, this facility started as an oil field in the 1930s. They started pulling oil out. Once the oil was mostly gone, they had this giant cavity, started storing gas there in the 1940s. SoCal Gas took over in the 1950s and started storing natural gas there. But it's never experienced a major earthquake. So I don't think we should wait around and find out if we have a massive earthquake in Los Angeles, we're gonna have a lot of things to deal with. We shouldn't having to be worried about what are we doing with all these massive gas leaks that are all over our city.
Also, the real estate around here, whenever it's sold, has to reveal that this area is prone to liquefaction. Under not even that big a shake, if it's the right frequency, we would have whole areas sinking and moving around. I mean, that area would very easily be destroyed by not even that big an earthquake.
Yeah. So these are all the concerns. The biggest thing that we found really is just people knowing about the facility. There's so many people who are like, oh, I had no idea. One of our good members who lives in the marina, she got involved in this because of the Aliso Canyon facility, and then one of the Food and Water Watch organizers was like, well, what about your facility? And she lives within a mile of it, and she had no idea that that was even there. And it's just, and she'd been there for I think 15, 20 years that they lived in that house, and it's just like, it's that fact that SoCal Gas and a lot of this infrastructure is allowed, because most people don't even know it's there. And our hope is, since Aliso Canyon happened, as terrible of an incident that was, it'll at least kind of shone a spotlight on what this stuff is, and it can try to empower the community to kind of advocate for our own public health.
Could you explain how the state of Nevada, Arizona, San Diego, other large regions provide natural gas to us as customers rather than storing it?
I mean, so SoCal Gas claims that their argument always seems to come down that they're using this locally and they need it to support Los Angeles and our energy needs and our natural gas needs for cooking and other varieties. But there are other municipalities that do not need, they don't store the gas locally. Like San Diego has no natural gas storage facilities. The closest one to them is ours in Playa del Rey. So they're able to use all their gas based on what's in the pipeline system, which largely anything that you're using as far as like heating or cooking is likely just in those pipeline systems. The storage units are likely going to be used for large industrial facilities and power generation. Or like I said, we're not able to get the data from SoCal Gas, but there's a large suspicion that they sell some of this out of market.
In 2013, I believe it was, they had to do a 96-hour burn-off to relieve gas pressure from that area in Playa.
The January, like, giant 100-foot fireball?
Yeah, it looks like a great big torch. Yes, it
Yes.
did. That's 96 hours coming from oil family. That's not a whole lot of release. But if that little bit, 96 hours of burn, was huge enough that they had to do it to take pressure out, and they continue to keep putting more in, the stability can't be there.
We don't.
I'm kind of, it's like, isn't that logical?
Yeah. And,
Okay.
and these facilities leak, like, regularly. They're constantly leaking. SoCal, you can actually sign up SoCal Gas. If you actually go to the website and I think under Take Action, you can sign up for gas alerts. So SoCal Gas, I don't believe there's one lawsuit that they had to settle, but basically they were required, if so much was released above normal, they had to let people know within, I think it's 36 hours or something. They don't always do it, but you can get those, and you'll know that all of a sudden there's a spike in gas. But the idea that you can just store gas under high pressure and that it's not going to get out, I mean, that's what pressure is things are trying to get out. So my argument is just frankly, like, the risk of an explosion or an incident like Aliso Canyon at this facility would be devastating, not just to our public health. It could be extremely devastating just to the larger economy of Los Angeles. And ultimately, what I feel is we're not getting any of this benefit. We're just carrying a whole bunch of risk. I don't understand why this facility is here. So we're just trying to educate people, and then hopefully through the Health Tracker app and the monitors, we'll actually start being able to have data that'll just strengthen our argument so that we can advocate more for the community.
Since this is such a significant threat to air traffic, what is the LAX position?
They haven't, we're trying to, one of the groups that I want to reach out to is actually the labor at LAX, because I feel like they have a lot in the game there. The only, we're also hoping that that issue will actually allow us to get a little more federal support for this project, because as of right now, largely we're just working with local and city officials. I don't know their specific stance on it, but we are reaching out to try to figure out, like, so that we can talk to them and see what their, my guess is a lot of them probably don't even know that that risk is there, and wouldn't even consider it, but that's definitely a group that we feel will have, they'll be advocating from a very unique perspective, and I kind of want to reach out to them. But, I mean, one of the biggest issues we're having with SoCalGas is they are staunchly refuse, really, the city to do anything. They're fighting the city. The city wants to just do a basic permitting inspection to finding out who really has the ability to regulate this facility. SoCalGas very much says it's only DOGR, the Department of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources, and the CPUC, so 2 state agencies. And we're trying to argue that the city should have a role to play. It's in our city. Mike Bonin put a motion together to just have the petroleum administrator at the city investigate the facility to find out who does have jurisdiction, because they do have some permits with the city. So on some level, they recognize the city's authority to do things there because they've applied for a permit. There's a Stand LA coalition. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Stand LA, which is standing against neighborhood drilling. So there's a resolution that's moving through the city to create a 2,500-foot setback on all oil and drilling operations. So one issue that we have is they're trying to get some of the wells at the Playa facility in that because they're trying to incorporate natural gas injection wells as well. So that could also be one avenue that we're looking at.
So, can you comment on 2 things? One is, what is the structure? It looks like a drill to me at the end of Kohler Boulevard, right next to Playa Provisions. They put up a big fence,
Yes.
and there's a big structure. What is that?
That has nothing to do with SoCalGas. That actually has to do with the development they're trying to put on that.
It's a sewer, it's a dual sewer line.
Oh, they're putting underneath? Okay.
And then it'll be finished in about 6 months,
Okay, and then it looks to me as though the facility, that you see on Culver below the bluffs has grown and really it increased in size, and the size of the pipes and everything. What is going on there that SoCalGas is doing?
I mean, I can't know for sure. My guess is a lot of the natural gas development that's happened has come incomplete. Basically, when California said they're going to move away from coal, and the state's been very, very much building up this bridge fuel idea with natural gas. Natural gas started to invest heavily into a lot of their facilities because they basically saw, all right, if we're going to be off of coal, they're going to need to use natural gas. So my guess is like they put in that bridge piping that hadn't been there previously. So that's my guess, is that they just saw it as like, we're the next big thing, so we're going to start investing in these facilities. I can't know that for certain, but my guess is it seems like a lot of their investment in some of these facilities has come since like they've known that we're trying to move away from coal and those other fossil fuels, and then with Jerry Brown having a very close tie with the gas industry. I believe his sister's on Semper's board. So I think they saw it as an opportunity to kind of expand their operations.
Couple of questions. Why you need to hire an engineer to do design the sensors, and they have been available for more than 100 years, and they're getting much cheaper in price and more accurate?
He's not like, that's just his profession. He's a volunteer.
The second question is, this orange color area in this dome, is it sweet or sour gas?
So,
Oh, the 2003, you're talking about the 2003
Yeah.
study? That was under the Playa Vista gas field?
It's sour
Huh?
natural gas.
Sour
I think
gas.
I know what you mean.
You know what that means? If anybody took a whiff will die.
Yeah, it means it's got extra sulfur and other contaminants,
If
carcinogens.
you take a whiff will die. There's no other choice, you're not in between. A full breath you die, you know?
Yes.
So, you cannot leave it like that, you have to sweeten it.
Yeah, but the engineer, we're not paying him, he's a volunteer with our group. He's a mechanical engineer, and he's actually just taking this on as a side project. It's not anything. We're basically just buying all the pieces in bulk, and we're building them as a group.
I wanted, the Sierra Club and, an environmentalist for a long time, we've known natural gas is a finite resource. It's not going to be around forever. And yet, so from a sustainability point of view, which is a big major theme in the Sierra Club, we should be conserving it or using it when, wisely, not as a wasteful resource. To hear you say how a lot of it's never reaching the consumer because it's under pressure and it's being lost into the atmosphere, and then I hear that when it is the remaining part that they withdraw after storage, it's largely contaminated and more natural gas is lost as they try to clean it again. So that I've heard it could be as much as 55–60% of the gas coming from Oklahoma and never reaches us as consumers. That's abhorrent, and it's arrogant of the gas company to be willing to let that much natural gas just never reach us.
Yeah, I don't know how much is lost, but they definitely, once they inject it, because it's an old oil field, they have to clean anything that they pump back out. So yeah, I can't even imagine what the net loss is through the entire process, even through like the fracking process. But I imagine it's not the most efficient. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. basically talks about fossil fuels and just how inefficient they are, and just like the idea of how much effort is put in and how much is wasted when you use it. Like economically, it doesn't really make that much sense. But yeah, so.
And like you, I don't understand, because the gas company is secretive about the structure, that large structure at the base of the bluffs. I have a working hypothesis that it might have something to do with modernization and doing slant drilling and preparing for a large subsidy of money from the state of California that might come to them if we ever end up bulldozing Vaghini wetlands, which is a big capital project, that's going to. So that really concerns.
Yeah, I mean, it's anyone's guess really. I mean, SoCal Gas is extremely secretive. One of the biggest issues, at least with Canyon's had, is that they still haven't been able to identify what's caused some of the health problems, because it's, as far as they know what should be coming out, like the methane, they know all the health impacts, and some of like the symptoms don't match to that. But SoCal Gas does not tell what their fracking solution is. It's proprietary, so we don't know exactly everything that gets injected into the ground, and they refuse to tell it because they say it's a trade secret. So there could be things that we're breathing in that we have absolutely no idea.
It's amazing they don't have to reveal what they're putting in there.
Like the trade secret thing is just I feel like public health should.
I was just going to add a few comments. I've been working with Patricia McPherson and Grassroots Coalition since the mid-90s about the gas out there. And we brought it up when Playa was going through its approval. And we had an expert with us, Dr. Andres, who wrote a book about the Playa del Rey gas field. And we said we were smelling gas. And they said, their $1 million experts said, Playa said, we have $1 million experts who say there's no gas problem out there. We're just a bunch of eco-beings. And so it took us 6 years, and we kept bringing more and more and more information to them until finally we got an independent study done, not paid by Playa, it was independent. Well, they had to pay for it, but it was independent, and it was somebody from out of state. And this company, ETI, did a study, and they showed enormous gas seeps under Lincoln Boulevard. This is Lincoln Boulevard over where Playa Vista is, and then west, and then some shallow over here.
Is that long straight one Washington?
The long straight one is Jefferson.
Yeah. So it's all under the marina too?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Playa facility goes, yeah.
And
Because, people, I've had a boat in the marina for 21 years, and I see little bubbles coming up. And I used to think, oh, it's just naturally occurring methane or whatever. But no, it's coming up from this facility and it's all under the marina.
This is the storage facility right here, this one. And this is like Lincoln going east. I mean, this is Lincoln and Jefferson going east.
Eric, right in the middle of the boat channel, there's a major, serious large well complex that is capped, but inadequately, around 1960 when the marina was built, and they a lot of the pressure leakage.
I went to an old photo, an aerial photo, that showed where the wells were, and at the time I was kind of amazed because there was apparently a well right under my boat. On the beach, and I was going, really, an old well under there?
And but it's worth documenting, if you see bubbles, take a little video clip and get a few of those things together, that would be fun.
What's the name of the book? This is the name of the book. Gas Migration Events Preceding Earthquakes. And Dr. Andres, he is a hero. He exposed so many things, Belmont High School, Playa Vista, at Fairfax, and he eventually got cancer from being exposed to these gases. And the thing that he brought up about Playa Vista, the gas coming out, it wasn't just methane. You know, people say, oh, a little methane. No, it was oil-filled gases coming up in Playa Vista with toluene, xylene, and hydrogen sulfide. So, you know, he brought that out. We finally got an EIR done on it, but they still got away with building there because they did an experimental gas mitigation system, and they're having to pull a whole lot of water out every day to keep their gas mitigation dry, and it's sucking the water out of the wetlands.
What's interesting is when it bubbles up through dry ground, none of us see it. But the part that bubbles up through the water, it's bubbles that you
You can
can...
see bubbles in the so-called freshwater marsh. There's bubbles that come out.
It's like the water is talking to us.
But there's 7 billion cubic feet of gas stored there at high pressure in a sandstone rock formation. Okay, so, you know, it's about equivalent of 7, I don't know, Dodger stadiums or something. And Grassroots Coalition fought for years and years and years and years, from the mid-90s, they're still fighting. And they did this settlement agreement, they got the settlement agreement through the CPUC, the SoCal Gas. Yes, they're the ones that got it. And that said they have to inform the community if they're going to expel gas, they have to.
And the pipelines go both ways. Why don't we send that gas back to Texas?
And that 7 billion, to kind of put that in perspective, what leaked out of Aliso, so it was leaking for one well. It was only one well, was leaking for 4 months, and for 4 months, 5 billion cubic came out of the ground. So this is bigger. Our facility is bigger than what leaked out of Aliso. So even though it is the smallest, just to give you an idea that it's still a very dangerous facility.
And Rob was right about there's a lot of wells out there. I think there's about 100 wells. Through the 20s and 30s, it was a big source of oil. But they didn't have all the laws we have now. So they would, when the well didn't have much more left, they would just throw some old chairs down there or something, you know, to cap it off. And they weren't capped off that well, a lot of them. So it's a big issue. And we went to the city of Los Angeles over and over and over again saying there's a problem with Playa Vista. And they said, they got the city to say there was absolutely no connection between a major gas leak in Playa Vista, just east of Lincoln, and a gas storage facility just west of Lincoln. No connection whatsoever. And that's what goes on. These companies are so wealthy and so rich. They have all these lobbyists. They have, you know, we go to these hearings and they have, you know, one of their lobbyists walking out at the city council hearing with the chair, with the head of the city council, or somebody walking out together from a door in the back behind the council. They have so much influence. But anyway, this is.
Yeah, funny story about that. So the Aliso Canyon, that 5-mile radius, I believe it's the 118. They consider it a boundary. So if you lived south of the 118, they're like, the gas didn't get to you. So like it just stopped. It just stopped right there. So like you could no longer, you couldn't apply for relocation funds. But if you were on the north side, then you were eligible because they basically just said a gas wall.
Because that line on Washington is the line between the city of Los Angeles. That's where Venice starts, down the middle of Washington. There's a whole huge area there that's in LA City.
And Culver City. Right. So, but also there's part of it's in the county, you know, the area around the marina. So have you tried to talk to any of the county folks?
I don't know. Have you talked to the county commissioners? I haven't reached out.
Well, not since Janice Hans did it, and we probably should, but because they redid one of the big drill sites at Mariners Village when Don Canopy was still in office. And they tried to hide that from everybody. And everybody's going, well, what's going on? And you can see what they were doing, sort of, but nobody would tell anyone. Finally, after hundreds of calls from them, they finally admitted they were doing something with the gas well. But they wouldn't give us much information. It would be good to, I think that Janice could probably get that and pull it out. Because it was like maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4.
Yeah. Great.
But yeah, there are, I mean, many of the improperly capped wells are in the city area of the Marina Peninsula, but there are a couple in the county, definitely.
And I noticed another thing, next week, and I don't have it in front of me, I don't think, but Janice Pond's going to be there. They're doing a grand reopening of Mother's Beach, apparently.
Yes, they are.
So that might be a good opportunity to go and, you know, interact some with those folks. The other thing I was going to say, this is years back when I first was involved with Playa wetlands issue. I met someone who had worked at SoCal Gas, and she said in the office, if people knew what was in their files and records, it would be shocking. I don't know if there's a way to try and get at any of that information, you know, but.
Whose files?
I think it was SoCal Gas.
Like their internal files?
Yeah, from their office. She was like an office administrative person, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that we've done a lot of like trying to do research and get a bunch of information from like the Air Quality Management District. I mean, even just getting ideas. So basically what's happened right now with the just the investigation into the facility, it's being held up by a lawsuit that's going on between the city and SoCal Gas surrounding Aliso Canyon. So basically the city attorney has told the petroleum administrator just to not do anything until that gets resolved. So like we don't know, but even in that case, we don't know how long that's going to take to get resolved. So we're pushing pretty hard on the Stand LA resolution that hopefully is going to come up to the city this fall. And hopefully that can at least shut down parts of the facility. So like maybe we can at least get some wells shut down. We don't know if it'll include the entire facility because the county did their health study of all the natural gas storage facilities and the oil wells and drilling in LA County. That came out I think in March. And so they're waiting right now on a economic study and a feasibility study before they move forward in the council. So we're kind of waiting on trying to find out when those are going to get released.
I've got an idea for the Airport Marina Group, and that is to form a phone banking system so that this group allies with other Sierra Club groups that are in different council members, LA council members, council districts, so we can reach a majority of 8 council votes to get that. What is that, Rob, again?
The Stand LA, so it's
2,500 feet.
2,500 foot. The county report said that you need 1,500 foot. So it hasn't like been discussed by the council yet in any of the committees, so we don't know really what they're going to settle. We're promoting the 2,500 feet because that's the safest distance for people, but obviously the lobbying is going to be pretty intense. So it's going to be a pretty interesting fight when that starts happening. But as of right now, The Stand Coalition is wanting 2,500 feet. Mike Bonin is supportive of that with Paul Koretz, and a couple of the other council members already come out in support of it. But we're definitely going to need more. And you know the oil and gas industry are going to spend a lot of money to fight this. So we're well aware of that. That's coming down the road. Any other questions?
I'm going to ask one more question. I understand, I'm going to go back to Port Ranch. I believe there's a cap on it right now. They have a cap right now because they want it, because it's, the people are petitioning it, and it's capped right now.
The one well that actually leaked? Or?
Well, they want to make, because they were trying to close it. They want them to close it, but it's not operating right now, it's capped.
It's storing gas. They're not supposed to take any gas out of it without like going through a very, but they did start storing gas there again. So they opened, so I believe it's 146 wells. They reopened a third of them that went through the new and improved safety measures, and then a third of those got shut down within 2 weeks. I think the LA Times reported about that in September. So right now it's running, of its original capacity, I think it's about 25% of what it was. Any other questions? Thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys for all the work you guys have been doing.